spotlight on the women creating an impact, leading organizations, and mission-focused strategic programs across the federal technology and consulting community. This is Impact. I am being joined today by Charlotte Lee, the Director of Strategic Growth at Granicus. Thank you so much for hopping on with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell me what it is first that you do over there at Granicus.
I have a pretty generic title because it's so much, and I'm basically under the guise of I can do what I think is cool.
That's cool.
Strategy and growth. I have an inside out, outside in job, I guess. So I have my basic premise as a CX expert in federal government, or now more broadly state and local as well. And I take that expertise and I help shape our internal capabilities, past performances to kind of match the audience where they are, because sometimes there's like a disconnect between what we do and what we're actually delivering in outcomes. And then there's also a getting out there, being the sort of ear and mouth for the company, and bringing the expertise of what's happening in government, what our customers need, back into the government. So it's I don't know if that is the right visualization, but it's a really dynamic, fun role that kind of straddles between the strategy and the business development. I say a dream job.
That's perfect. If you enjoy it and it's a dream role, that's perfect. That's a perfect job.
Yes.
So now let's talk about your journey to get to where you are today. What lessons have you learned along your professional journey, and how have they positively influenced your leadership style?
I've been asked this question a couple of times, so like I used to answer it a certain way, but I'm going to try a different one because I've been saying a lot recently. I saw this TikTok. I'm a big TikTok fan.
Yes. Me too.
And I saw it and I was like, this makes sense. And it was this thing, and it was called Cringe Mountain. And so everybody has to climb Cringe Mountain in order to get to the land of the cool on the other side. But on the base of Cringe Mountain are people who've never started. And those who are also climbing Cringe Mountain will never be a hater, right? And so whenever we have to do something like embarrassing or out there or whatever, like even posting on LinkedIn sometimes can feel like cringe, like, oh, like it's so vulnerable, like this is too, like, am I being oversharing, or even, participating in podcasts, like this is in some ways, right? Like a lot of, as a woman, especially an Asian woman too, right? Like it's not a thing that you were trained for at all. So it felt very cringy. And I think that my whole thing is to climb Cringe Mountain. And recently I've been telling the kids, like, you gotta climb Cringe Mountain. You gotta be bad at it. You've gotta embarrass yourself. So, I think that's been the foundational, like, I've had to climb a lot of Cringe Mountains.
And for my 15-year-old son, I am always on the bottom of Cringe Mountain. I would just say, I try, but I am always there.
Yeah.
So what role has mentorship played in your career, and can you share a specific instance where a mentor's guidance significantly impacted your leadership approach?
Oh, absolutely. And I will tell it again and again. 8 or so years ago, I met Martha Doris. I don't know, those who may be listening in CX. She's the queen of CX. And I remember going to lunch with her very distinctively and asking her to teach me to be able to kind of carry on the CX perspective with her. And it was at a point where I decided that it was when like disruption was like a big thing. I want to be a disruptor. I want to be able to actually amplify things that have already been like rolled up the mountain, right? Like help carry the weight. So I said, in exchange, I will lend my energy and my enthusiasm and sort of share in the work of getting CX out there. So I don't know if she internalized it that way. I did. And I was like, I'm going to help her in whatever way I can. I will show up and I will learn from her. And she is through and through was a champion for me. And I think a mentor is one thing, right? A mentor is more like a push notification, right? Like, hey, I need some guidance. And I would say a tribe of mentors, right? Like for various things, but to have one specific champion who's finding you the opportunities, who's suggesting you the jobs, who's like making the seat at the table for you, who's opening the doors literally for you, like having a champion is a lifelong investment of loyalty and trust with a person. That I think has been the most rewarding thing in my career, and I owe so much to her support through the years.
That's great. So now, in your opinion, what are the most common barriers that women face in leadership roles today, and what strategies can be implemented to overcome them?
Oh gosh, as a mom, I think the mom guilt is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I see a lot of PTA moms who are like neurosurgeons and they feel guilty, and I'm not a neurosurgeon. I have a relatively fun, flexible job, and I still don't find myself having that, but instead of being at the happy hours, those things are important, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that women, I read a book a long time ago, I recommended to all my mentees, right? It's called, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. And it was basically saying like after a certain level of competence, like there's a different game being played. And that's at the water coolers and the happy hours and the golf tournaments and the tennis tournaments, right? And women, I think, often refuse to play that game and obviously, in fact, become resentful of that game. But if you really think about it in an empathetic lens, at a certain point, we know that you're competent and can deliver the work. It's more about how do we want to shake hands and like engage in a group project, right? Like two companies working together is a group project. So like, do you want to be in a group project with me? It's not determined necessarily by the most competent deliverable person, right? And I think women get stuck so much in like making sure their deliverable is excellent and everything is perfect and and then feel resentful that the promotions and the big deals go to the men. And I'm like, you guys aren't even at the golf course, right? So
Right.
I'm very pro golf. I'm very water cooler. I'm very pro happy hour for women.
That's very true. That's a very, very good fact. So how do you define authenticity in leadership, and what steps do you take to stay true to yourself and navigate the demands of your role?
I think authenticity is my superpower, and I would say it's because I was naturally cringy and I don't, sometimes actually, people are like, maybe you can be a little less authentic sometimes, because, you are hurting people's feelings, so, authenticity is something I think about constantly because I have to sharpen it as my tool and gift, and often sometimes my demise, right? So I have to learn to sharpen this tool of authenticity that I'm proud to say that I have. But I think that, in general, I would define authenticity as, the acceptance that failure is an attitude and not an outcome, which is also something I tell my kids, right? Like, there is no such thing as a failure. Actually, it's all a state of mind, winning and losing, right? So, although like not getting a trophy at the end of like a tournament or whatever, it feels like a loss, right? But I'm like,
Right.
that ability, that muscle to be able to come back around and not fear failure, in small and large things of attempting the deal, of having the conversation, of reaching out and doing the things, right? And it's along with the cringe mountain of it all, right? Like climb cringe mountain, be yourself and pursue the deal. Maybe you're wrong and it's okay to accept that. Like, when I meet people who can't accept that it might not turn out well, that's when I'm like, oh, there's a lot of fear there. There's not a lot of authenticity because it's cloaked in, a fear of failure.
And finding the environments where you're able to be your authentic self is really important too, because I have worked in industries and offices where it's highly discouraged, and I did not do well in those instances. I don't know about you.
Oh, 100%. One of the reasons I'm so happy, as part of my team at Granicus is that I told my boss that my, metric of success is the ability for me to be as authentic as I can. So as soon as I feel like I'm asked not to be myself, I have to get out of there. It's totally possible that you are not the right fish in the right tank. And so as soon as you feel like you are not accepted, I think you should leave. It's not really about like resentment toward others. It's just not your pond.
Yes. I worked in an office once where a guy said, you can't joke around so much. You've got to be more serious. And there is a place you have to be serious. But I knew also that I was not meant to be in that office because.
Oh, absolutely not. That is no fun. I've never heard anyone say, like, please be more serious.
I know, that's, ugh.
Maybe I self-select out of it because I can never.
I know. Like, maybe they said it and I just totally ignored it because that's not what I want to hear.
Selective hearing. For sure.
So what advice would you give young women aspiring to be leaders, and how can they best prepare themselves for some of the challenges they're going to face?
I like to get comfortable with risk. When Forum asked me to provide a quote, I really thought about a lot of it. I think leadership is the willingness to see the opportunity in the undefined. That's why it's called leadership, because you go first, or you take the first stab at it, right? And I feel that women, and men too, people in general, do not like the unknown. But if you are uncomfortable with the risky and unknown, you will never be a leader, right? So that's, to me, what a leader is. And a lot of times people see people get promoted upward or become leaders, and they're like, well, they didn't do these things and they don't deserve it. But I'm like, but did they do something that you refused to do? Did they take the risk on something that, wasn't defined? Were they the first to define it? Was it cringy? Was it wrong? Sure, maybe, but were they the first to go? And oftentimes, obviously, I meet people who are seen as leaders that I'm like, how do people follow you? That's not, not to be mean or anything, but like, gosh, but somewhere in there, I have this deep faith that they took a risk and are trying something that a group of someone didn't, right? So, I encourage women to just like bathe in risk, to understand risk and, get comfortable and go first, right? And I think that's, at this point, how I'm feeling.
Be the first one up Cringe Mountain.
Yes. Start on Cringe Mountain, It's like, I feel like sometimes, like a walking poster thing, but mostly like the high school ones that I used to see all the time. Like, I remember all of them these days, right? Because it's like, best way to get ahead is to use the one you have now, or, shoot for the stars. And if you, or moon, if
you would say them and think they were so corny.
They were so corny. And now they make 100% sense now. And it's your ability to like apply that for yourself. I don't know if anyone else remembers their like high school posters on the wall, but
oh yes,
it lives rent free in my mind.
Well, Charlotte, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I really appreciated the event. For those who are listening and didn't make it out, it was fabulous, and I think it was a great opportunity to highlight work that women are doing. I know my partner said, like, did productivity go down because all these like powerful like decision-making women were in one place? Like, totally. And I felt it. And it was, not just an event full of women. A lot of the men who were, it was actually probably one of the most well-mixed events I've ever been to. Right. And it was so dynamic. So, kudos to the Forum G2X team who put it all together. And I'm sure I'm leaving out like entities, but,
no,
I think recognition, though it can be cheesy, though it's a little bit cringy. And I did get in trouble because I didn't stand up when my name was called, because I was like, it's too cringe for me to stand up. So I can't, I also miss a step, but, I think recognition is really important. And I encourage everybody to find ways to recognize people in their lives and ask for the recognition. Like, ask for it.
Yes.
I really want to be put up for this. So.
Awesome. Well, Charlotte, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you're keeping up to date on the latest episodes, and learn more at govforum.io.